Amajita, South African under-20s, crowned champions of Africa, beating Morocco. We were in the final in 1997 against Morocco. Nabo Payne, Nabo Stiga, Nabo Matthew Booth. We lost in that final. But revenge tastes so sweet. 28 years later, we have been crowned the under-20 African champions. How are you feeling? What's your reaction to that?
Man, I wish I was tuned into all the games, because this is one of via highlights. This is you tuned in via YouTube for a delay. That's a good thing about YouTube, right? You can always track back to the start of the game and then run it back to where it's live. But it was a varying display, right? Because there's games against Egypt where we lost that one against Egypt. That was our opening game, if I'm not mistaken.
We won
that one.
Yeah.
Who did we lose to? We lost to Burkina.
We lost our second game, and then went on to win against
the last two. Zambia, the last two.
Yes, I think it was Burkina Faso.
Yeah, could be there. So it was a mixed bag to begin with, right? But once we got to like game number 3, because before I even go there, why did our group have 5 teams and the rest had 4?
I think the numbers of the teams that qualified. I'm not certain why we ended up with 5. Actually, must maybe look that up to verify. But yeah, that's the situation we found ourselves in.
But I think once we were headed to the penultimate game of the group phase, we were favorites to qualify, and we handled that one quite well. And then there's Nigeria, we beat them, and then obviously in the final there's Morocco. What I will say, Jay, is something that we've been saying for a long time, right? But now we can prove that with silverware, we can prove that with qualification to Afcons and to World Cups. We've got a bunch of talented youngsters. My favorite from the campaign was Ulangalihle Pili. I just think he's a player I like to watch, because we tend to lament in terms of wingers these days tend to cut in, pass back. They don't take on their man. Wasn't successful all the time, but it was very interesting and exciting to watch. And then on the other side is also April as well, right? Has a similar tools.
That's my
but they're different. That's your favorite,
That's
right?
my dude.
But all in all, Jay, the team was well balanced. I mean, in the final, we weren't necessarily the team that dominated the encounter, but we were very, very well disciplined. We were defensively disciplined. That's what I want to say. The keeper, Ulo, surprisingly composed for his age, Jay, because he doesn't just jump and react to everything. He's well positioned. He marshals his defense quite well. I think that's a lot of maturity on his head at that point in time. Then there's Smith, who stands out, right? Because he's lanky, he's tall, he's got that curly hair. Always there for 50-50 duels, always there fighting for the ball. But players like Abo Makuche and Abo Rapu, who show their experience, who show their talent as well, in the heart of the midfield, or rather, Rapu going up and down and doing whatever he pleases. Those were a good watch those were a good watch, sorry. So all in all, Jay, what I'd say about the under-20 is that it was a mixed bag, but we handled all teams. Like whether it's the physical side, whether it's the speedy side, whether it's teams who played in crosses and long balls, we had it all to deal with all kinds of comers on the tournament, or rather on the day. So for me, Jay, I'm surprised, to be honest, because I knew a few names. I knew Rapu, I knew Upili, I knew Vilagazi, not much else. But when you get to see who the other teammates are and what they bring to the party, you're surprised and you're happy about that. I wished Umfundo Vilagazi would have brought that magic from the Phillies games to some of his cameos against the Chiefs to the tournament, because I think he had times where he shone. But compared to his peers, and I don't want to compare because they're all champions at that point in time, but I just think to myself, with his potential and what he could bring to the party, if only, but good thing that the team is good enough that if he doesn't shine, there's players all over the park, literally all over the pitch, to shine and do the work. Case in point, Uhomulimo Kekana with that banger late on in the game. So Jay, I'm happy, I'm ecstatic. I'm just waiting to see where these boys play, what happens of them, because we've got like a Chandra Campbell, right, already in Belgium. I wonder where these boys will end up and which teams they'll play for. But so far, so excited, man.
The golden generation, and what you are then hoping to see is continuity into the under-23s ahead of the qualifiers, and hopefully to qualify for the Olympics in LA in 2028, and then into the Bafana structures, right? And I want to single out a man by the name of Walter Steenbok-Chuck, who was the technical director at SAFA, recently parted ways with SAFA because he got accusations of insubordination and not or violating the statutes of SAFA. And that leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, because it feels as though somebody who is working is not tolerated at SAFA. Instead, most recently we heard breaking news that the president of SAFA got an illegitimate payment of 10 million rand. And Steenbok-Chuck, as a technical director, he's the one who appointed this technical team, both of the under-20s and the under-17s. And one of the agendas that he put into motion was to develop a style of play. I mean, last year there was a coaching symposium around methodology. And the reason I even bring that up is because when you watch the under-20s, which I hadn't watched the under-20s when they were going through the COSAFA qualifiers for the Afcon, which they did brilliantly in. And I hadn't seen the under-17s much as well until I saw them at the under-17 Afcon. But you watch the under-17s, you watch the under-20s, they play just like Bafana. Remember what we were saying, and not just what we were saying, but this is what was coming out from the tournament and other teams and other media outlets from other countries around the continent, that there is a very defined style of play the Bafana playing. This was exactly, Chuck, the kind of messaging that was coming out now as well from this under-20 World Cup, that the technical experts out at the tournament, they were raving about the methodology, the style of play of the under-20s. And that was the brainchild of somebody like a Walter Steenbok, who previously had been I think a scout, a chief scout for Sundowns as well as Kaizer Chiefs, double masters, somebody who's been to England, and someone who really took it upon himself to build out the national agenda, where even someone like Raymond Mtaka, the coach of the under-20s, his sole job is to coach the under-20s. And it's something that reminded me of what happened with England when I think they were not. Did they qualify for the 2014 World Cup?
Yeah, they did.
They were knocked out early in that one. Then they didn't qualify for the 2016 Euros. And they had the project, I think was it 2022, where they were going to realign and just knuckle down in terms of the development teams and feeding into the national team. And then you saw the under-17s win the World Cup for England, and you've seen the under-21s as well do well in the Euros. And you've seen, of course, England go to World Cup semi-finals and Euro finals, because there was an agenda that was put into motion, and they followed through on that. And you see the players you see successful in the England senior national team are guys who've been successful at the national ages, right? And this is what you had a Walter Steenbok do, and these are the results. Now that he's gone, I really hope, and seemingly Malefinsek is going to take over as a technical director, I hope that continues, because we cannot have a situation whereby we're finally finding success. The thing that we feel as South African fans, that we are a footballing nation and we need to be towards or at the top of African football. And now we've spoken about in that way. If you look at the landscape, Chuck, from the senior team to the under-17s to the under-20s, even on the women's side, it's Morocco, it's South Africa, it's Egypt. And maybe you can sneak in a Nigeria there. And there's a rivalry happening at the top, right? I mean, you think about the under-17s. We were knocked out by Morocco. They went on to win the championship. In this one, we met Morocco in the final. We win the championship. So we are right there. We are right there, Chuck. And what you are absolutely hoping for is that the administrators do not mess this up for us, because there is an unprecedented length of success that is staring us in the face if we just handle it properly. In terms of the final, in terms of the boys winning, congratulations to them. It was brilliant, and what we see is what I'm talking about, that it came from meticulous planning, and this is what you get, right? Clearly the talent is there. And Raymond Mtaka, the way that he handled this team, he didn't have Mbogaz, right? He didn't have Chandra Campbell, who are big players for him in qualifying for this Afcon under 20s. And you have Mfundo Vilakazi, big name from a big team, Kaizer Chiefs. But he can say that maybe you're not quite the guy, go in a different direction. You mentioned Pili. Pili wasn't playing latterly, and he was able to set him. And there was the matter of even Utiwani, the captain who plays for Sundowns. He went down in the first game, but then they rallied. Think about a Sundowns player as well, like Uliklaku, another big name, right? But the coach looked at his team and could make the decision that gonna go in a different direction, was not overawed by the fact that big names from big teams, and that's what we're just gonna go with. But because he knows these players and he's been with them for a period of almost 2 years now, or just over 2 years, he was well placed to marshal them to this title. And it's a big day. It's a big moment in South African football, and you just hope that it continues. And I got a warning: AFCON, December 2025, January 2026. You see what our youngsters are doing. Wait for our senior boys as well. And the AFCON, of course, is also coming up, where we are defending champions. It's just a good time to be a South African football fan.